We are live now. Yes, thank you, Tim,
Okay,
for that. Good morning. Yes, thank you. We are
good
live.
morning.
And good morning to everybody watching us. This morning it is Wednesday, December 4th, and we have the pleasure of welcoming James Scott Brew today, who is an architect here in Japan, working for one of the biggest corporations in Japan. Good morning. Good morning.
It's
Hey,
it's
hello.
Kaya. It's morning,
Yes.
Kaya.
Good morning,
Kaya,
Kaya.
you're my only fan. You're my only fan.
Don't
That's
do
what I
that.
heard.
Don't.
Yes. Right. And
Ah,
so today we're going to talk about retiring in Japan, something that is really a hot topic right at the moment, and
mm,
that many people would love to know more about. James has been thinking about it and working on it. Probably, yes, he will give us more details. And of course, Tim and I, we can share stories from our lives and also the acquaintances and friends we have who have retired here in Japan, who we have worked with. So, but before we start with the real conversation, I would like to give a brief thank you, but a very deep one, to our first sponsor, Kanchu, Kanagawa Chuo Jutaku. You can find them online at kanachu.com. They offer services in the field of real estate. If you want to buy or sell property in Tokyo and Yokohama, you can contact James Howell at james@kanachu.com. Please do not hesitate to do that, and you'll have your project carefully thought over and thought about, and you can also work and get the best of it. Okay, thank you for this. And James, well, I would like to talk about once again retiring in Japan, and it has been a hot topic, but also a painful topic for many people here because the
mm,
Japanese, let's say, business culture, managerial systems, they actually do not follow closely. Let's say the legislation that says that people in Japan can, or they should retire at the age of 65. They can
mm.
work actually until the age of 65. But maybe you can share your own experiences with us and tell us why this is a topic that is so close to your heart at the moment.
Well, it started, I think, for me personally, it started when my company started to reduce salaries and basically kick people out of being, what do you call seishain is in English is what, permanent status? Is that
Permanent
permanent?
Yeah.
status
Permanent
employees,
status?
yes.
And so it was a shock and horror to me. And I spent a great deal of months researching what is this about. And I couldn't fathom the idea of people talking about sort of forced retirement when we have a country with every day there's 400 less Japanese people in Japan than the day
Hmm.
before, every
Right.
single day. So that's 12,000 less Japanese workers every single month, or people, if you will.
Hmm.
But but why would you do that? When I had read research then shortly after knowing this was the case in Japan that most Japanese people want to work past age 65,
Yes.
even beyond 70, many of them.
Hmm.
So why would that be
Yeah.
a thing? Like what is the why is this a thing? And so I put together a pretty powerful 13 slide deck after
Hmm.
a lot of research and careful story design and crafting. And then I made sure every single person I knew at my company got a copy of it. And
Great.
Yeah.
and in a matter of about in Japanese time, what's Japanese time? Japanese time about a year, the
Hmm.
policy was changed and they immediately restored people who had been kicked out like me back to
Oh.
seishain after 2 years of 50% salary reduction.
Hmm.
And which means I worked for a year for free. So if you think about
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
and yeah, so the policy changed. I'd like to think it's because of me, but of course I don't believe that. But I heard later that something like 40% of people that were in my same position turned
Hmm.
60 and were suddenly, well, either they may have been shocked or surprised, or maybe they knew. Um, but felt the same way as I did, that this is ridiculous. It's ridiculously young, first of all.
Yeah.
Well, we'd like to think so, and or I'd like to think so. And I think that they just really probably love their work. And if you do love what you do, then you never work a day in your life, right? And so
Right.
why would this salary reduction and this whole forced sort of exodus from the company happen? And
Yeah.
at the same time, I had a senior mentor who's now officially retired, who kept introducing himself at meetings for 5 years as retired, but he was coming to work every day. And so I wondered if there was something lost in translation where this word doesn't, this isn't the right word. I kept telling him that's not the right word in English. You're not retired if you're showing up for work and handing out business cards at meetings and going
Yeah.
to, events. And we're, I don't understand. And so then when I met one of my son's childhood or his elementary school friend's mother, who told me her father was an architect and she would introduce him to me, and he worked at Takanaka, but he's retired. And I said, oh, okay, he's retired. Yeah, he's got to be in his mid 70s. And he gives me 3 business cards the first time I meet him, one for his art studio collection, where I couldn't resist buying a piece of his art, one for his architecture practice, and one for his full-time job teaching at Kyoto Daigaku.
Right.
And I said, that's not retired. So, so personally, I have been struggling with what is
Yeah.
retirement in Japan, and what is, who are you? How do you define yourself after retirement? And maybe Tim, you're retired, right?
Yeah. 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 Yep.
So I don't know. Maybe you have experience or opinion or a feeling that this transition from uh, your work to something else.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
personally cannot say. Okay, please go ahead, Tim.
No, no, go ahead. Go ahead, Maya.
No, because you're. Sorry, I was trying to fill the gap.
Yeah. I, you know, what is retirement in Japan? That's a good question because it seems like it's okay. You're no longer a seishain. That
Mm,
seems like the definition to me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
mm,
to them, you know.
mm,
And
mm,
my case is different than yours. One, I was self-employed, and
mm,
two, I chose to retire. And
mm,
but I've told Maya many times, you know, basically, I just don't want to travel anymore. I just got sick of traveling. I love my work. I love my job. Um, but if I was rich, I would have done it for free. You know what I mean?
yeah.
If I was a wealthy guy, I would have done this stuff for free, which is kind of what I'm doing with Maya. You know, like I this is my fix. This is I'm not getting paid for it, and I'm not asking to get paid, but I
Mm,
still enjoy interfacing Japanese with non-Japanese people. I like
mm,
teaching people.
mm,
This gives me one avenue to do it, and my everyday life here also allows me to do it on a
mm,
personal everyday level. So I don't
mm.
miss the content of the work. It's just that I'm not getting paid now for it. However, and I've said this before, if a really fun job dropped in my lap and I didn't have to travel, then
Mm,
just for the fun of it. Um,
yeah.
so I'm in a different space than you are, and also
Mm,
I don't mean this in a positive or a negative way, but I don't tie my identity to what I did.
mm, mm,
Um, I feel like I have a lot of interest and a lot of
mm,
things I still want to do,
mm,
even if not professionally necessarily. So it was easy for me,
mm,
right? But if somebody spends their whole life working for something and it's a goal and they really love it, then being
mm,
told you have to retire,
mm,
that would bug. That would. But my personality is like, okay, well, screw you. I don't need you. That's how I am, right? If you don't want me, I don't want to be there.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess that's how I rationalize it in my head. It's the
Mm.
defiant guy inside me, right?
Yeah.
So, for what it's worth.
Yeah. That's all really insightful and interesting. I, I don't know. I this isn't, there's not, how do I say, I was telling my wife, I don't know if there's any comparison. I've never worked anywhere but an architecture firm since I'm trying to figure out if I was actually still 17 when I got my first job in architecture, but
Yeah.
it was once I had finished one semester of college and I put some drawings under my arm and I walk into an architect's office back in Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin, just across the bridge from Duluth, Minnesota. And there was no advertisement in the newspaper for a job. There was nothing. I was just this shy kid and walked in and they hired me on the spot for like $2.65 an hour. And so I was 17, late 17 or early 18-year-old kid. And I never stopped working there or anywhere in architecture since then. And
Yeah.
so defining myself as an architect, as you said, that you didn't, define yourself by your work. I feel like licensed engineers and practices, whether you're a hairdresser, a licensed architect, or a licensed engineer, or a licensed doctor, or a licensed lawyer, or a licensed, and you stay in that licensing profession, it's very hard to not define yourself by that. A real estate agent would apply as well. And
Sure.
and anything where you kind of, yeah, you sought that achievement you mentioned, and then you secured it and you locked it in, especially, well, maybe not especially, but I never thought about not being an architect. I guess I thought I'd die in one of those
Yeah.
crazy bike accidents that I've had or something, so I wouldn't have to deal with this moment of retirement facing decisions. So
Mm,
I don't know. I don't know. That's just sort of where
If
I'm at. So I'm in an exploratory stage.
Yeah.
right. Well, yes, I wanted to say that I don't have the experience yet of my personal experience, but when I was working with my previous employer, so my coworkers there, quite a big portion of them were around their 60s or just before their 60s, and many of them were at a crossroads because basically what happened was that their companies, so they were dispatched to the organization they worked for, and their companies they had the internal regulations that the employees could work only until 60
Mm.
with their full salaries and permanent employee status and so on and so on, and many of them were actually looking for something to do after they officially retired from those jobs. So some of them were happy and lucky enough, to continue working until 65. But I also have to say that there are very few people. I worked in the travel industry, and very few people were actually allowed to work after 60. So they had to find something else. And of course, those who were at, had higher status positions, they would be sent by their companies to organizations that would allow them to work until 65. Of course, their salaries wouldn't be as high as before, but they wouldn't be as low as 50% of what they received before. So it was a compromise for everybody at that point of time. I
Mm.
also found, in some organizations there, if you were really high up in the hierarchy, you could continue working until even 70. And sometimes after 65, actually, your salary would be reduced to 50% of what you received before that. But it's really difficult. It was difficult. I think that times are changing at the moment, and it is thanks to people like you, James, who
No.
put the envelope. No, because I think it is really. I'm not trying, to compliment you or whatever, but I think that more companies are actually realizing that the human resources they have, and they try to retire at the age of 60, have still so much value, and they can
Mm.
contribute still so much to the company because of the experience they have, because of the networks they have, because of
Yeah.
everything. And it's like telling them, just go away, we don't care about those years you spent with us, and all
Yeah.
all the things you know and you can do. So the
Yeah.
situation is changing nowadays too. But
To
I
that
think
to
that
that point.
is,
No, I'm sorry.
yeah. No, I just wanted to say that there is still a lot of ageism. And I'm sorry to say this, but please go ahead, Tim.
No, I was just going to say this parallels to women getting higher positions
Mm-hmm.
in the workforce. A long time ago, I predicted wrongly that Japan would change not because they wanted to, but because they had to, and
Mm.
that people are talking about, oh, we'll import foreigners to fill these
Yeah.
positions, and my logic always was, wait a minute, 50% of your population is not being used, and they all speak perfect
Yeah.
Japanese and understand the
Yes.
culture,
Yeah.
and they're highly educated, you know, and you're just
Mm.
pretending they don't exist.
Mm.
And so I
Yeah.
thought,
Mm.
out of necessity, that they would change, and they haven't. It's almost like a boiling
Yeah.
frog, the frog in
Um,
water, and it's
Yeah.
yeah.
happening so slowly that
Right.
nothing is prompting change almost. You know what I
But
mean?
Tim,
Yeah.
my position about women, and I'm sure, sorry, for just detouring a little bit.
No.
My
No.
position about women is that many companies have realized, the necessity to employ more women, and they do that. They allow
Mm.
women to go back to work after giving birth. The thing, though, is that many women still prefer not to go back to work,
Yeah,
and
that's part of
they
it.
have their,
Yeah, sure.
yes, and they have their reasons. They have their valid reasons for
Yeah,
that. But so I think that the change should come, from women as well. You need more people among women like James who still push the envelope,
Mm.
right? And so
yeah,
I would say that until maybe 10 years ago, it was so much more difficult for women to continue working. Nowadays, it's not that difficult. And
Right.
I know that I'll ruffle many feathers here the wrong way. You know, I know that. But sorry, I have been through the system. I pushed the
yeah,
Mm.
envelope, and I know that
Yeah.
it is really important for everybody to push the envelope, because if there are people who want to work and there are more of them, the system will change. Right?
Yeah. I
So,
agree.
mm,
yeah. And the thing is, it's not just women. There's a lot of men. They're
yeah,
saying, you know what? I don't want to be in management. This is
yeah.
ridiculous. I
Yeah.
get all these extra
Eat.
hours and I don't get
Drink
paid
something.
for it. So I'd rather just
Hmm.
stay. So men are doing that too here, and in the U.S. Um, I
Yeah.
guess I can't blame them.
Yeah.
No,
I
you
think.
cannot blame them. No, I
Yeah,
don't
you
blame
know.
anybody for not pushing the
Yeah,
envelope, because at the end
Right.
of the day, it's their choice, and everybody has the right
right.
to make their choices, right?
Yeah,
But you cannot blame it only on the system. So
Yeah.
it's of course these are interconnected things, So things
Yeah.
are changing very slowly here. And once again, we have talked about this before, but we need examples, of course, people who want to work, who set an example. And also we need, what's that, role models, right?
Mm.
So,
Mm.
and
Mm.
those roles, the number of the role models actually increases, but it increases at a much slower pace than it increases in other parts of the world.
Yeah.
yeah,
Do you know Yoshie Komura-san? She
Uh,
has the company Work Life Balance, I think, here in Tokyo.
mm,
When I first moved here, I somehow stumbled upon her TED Talk and reached out to her, only to find she can't speak English. But but that's okay. One of her staff was bilingual, and we met, and I was really impressed by her story. And you should look up her TED Talk, Yoshie Komura-san, and
okay.
I think I'm saying it right. And anyway, it's in both Japanese and I think there's an English overdub. But it's this story about how she, kind of came home from the hospital with their second baby and her family, and her husband had just assumed she won't be working, and she had assumed I'll be going back to work very soon.
Yes.
And this conflict was just a shock to them, like both. They were both shocked together. And it's a great story because it all ends well, but after a little bit of readjustment by the male in the house, um,
Yeah.
reimagining of the future, she went right back to work and continues her work with companies across Japan in measuring and increasing their performance by reducing work hours and by
Mm-hmm.
improving work-life balance at companies in whatever ways that means from a consulting standpoint. So I just
Yeah.
found the work fascinating and quite interesting, and certainly this is a lot of what my architecture work is related to, is this stuff that's sort of on the periphery, like health and wellness in the workplace. You go, what's that about? Exercise equipment? No, nothing to do with that. Um, anyway, it's a really fascinating topic. I guess it probably falls under this umbrella of DEI today. We might describe it, and I've been trying to figure out if Japanese companies are setting hard targets for DEI stuff, or soft, squishy language about hopeful, wishful thinking. So far, I've only found hopeful, wishful thinking in the
Mm-hmm.
companies I've been able to get anything from. But what we really need are hard targets for, especially as you addressed, Maya, women in the workplace. And
Yeah.
I was just personally pleased when I met a woman at Nikken when I joined the first day, and she was pregnant, and very obviously, and then when she left to have her baby, I assumed we'd never see her again, and suddenly she pops up back at the same desk 2 years later, and I'm like, wow, you came back, this is great. And she said, basically, I never left, just just a leave of absence. And I was like so pleased that, because I had thought maybe Japan just pushes people out after they have a baby
Mm-hmm.
and want to stay home, and I was really pleased that we weren't doing that, and we were taking care of
Yeah.
people and recognizing that, they probably do want to work again, so
Yeah, but
so
it gives me hope, and I believe that because yes, some people do want to work again, and your
mm,
company, the company you work for, has
mm,
set up the necessary well regulations, the internal regulations, right, and the rules of employment and everything, and
mm,
also it gives me hope that now, as they have changed basically the regulations, internal rules of employment for people in their 60s, then hopefully there will be more companies like that. And if that company, in Japan, it takes time for
mm,
everybody to to start doing things in a new way. But once the big companies really start doing that, they lead by example, and
mm,
sooner or later others follow.
mm,
And it's interesting also to me because, for example, we have politicians, right? In business, up until now, yeah. So there is no retiring age for politicians. I have heard that if there is any retiring age for academics, it's really quite late, maybe 70s or 80s, probably depends
mm,
on the university. But
mm, yeah,
we need to work basically also to have these limits pushed
mm,
also in business, because once again,
mm.
I mean, 60 is such a young age.
I'd
Especially
like to think
now.
so. Yeah.
Yes, especially
Especially
now.
now.
I
Yeah,
Yeah.
remember,
people are healthier. Yeah,
yes,
Mm,
yeah.
I
So
mm,
remember when I was, yeah. No, just a brief story. When I was in Hokkaido, so I ran in 10-kilometer marathons. And then for me that was really a very very difficult thing to do, because basically I'm a short distance runner, not really that, and 10
mm,
kilometers was very difficult. But my point is that whenever I participated in an event, a marathon event, I
mm,
always struggled. And then people in their 60s, men and women, they would just come from behind me, and go, and they would
leave
finish
you in
like
the dust.
leave me in the
yeah.
dust. Yes, and I was like, oh, I'm just, I'm in my 30s, and what's this? How can these people? And my thinking was really ageist at that time. I'm sorry, I
Mm.
apologize for that. I thought,
Absolutely.
that I thought that because I was so young, I would be faster than anybody else, and I wasn't. I was so much slower. Yes, thank you, Tim, for that.
Yeah,
So,
and then we got to take a quick break for our lovely sponsors. And when we
Okay.
do that, I had a few questions for James regarding, what happened after that presentation. I know things changed, but let's go back and I had a few questions about that, but
Okay.
for now,
Yeah.
Maya, take it away.
Well, thank you, Tim. And once again, this is a big thank you to our other sponsor, Houze Inc. Houze works in the area of custom home design, construction, and renovations. They also do commercial building construction. If you want to work with them, and we do hope that you decide to work with them, you need to contact Hana Uroshizawa Howell. She is on LinkedIn, and we have also shared her contact details in the description of the YouTube video. So do not hesitate, reach out and talk with Hannah if you have a project in mind. And well, Tim, go ahead with the questions to James. And I think that
Okay.
also, yeah, we want to, oh, at least
Just a
I
little
want
more
to,
follow up. Yeah, I wanted to do a little more
Mm.
follow up. But
yes,
before I do
follow
that,
up. Yeah.
I had to laugh. You were talking about being licensed, and I'm licensed in absolutely zero, nothing. If you go look at my profile, I tell you all the things I'm not licensed in. I'm not
Oh,
licensed JLPN. I got zero. I have nothing. I'm not a certified trainer. I'm a certified nut. That's the only thing I'm certified in. So I didn't so in a sense, I maybe that's why I didn't tie my identity to it. It was just kind of something I did, you know.
yeah.
But putting that aside, so you said that you did your presentation, you told your story, and there was some change, some movement. So where does that put you now? Is it like, is there no limit to the age now, or did they just come up with another cutoff age?
I think the cutoff age is 65 now. I think, well, yeah, and I believe I don't know for certain. And by the way, none of this stuff about salary reduction and not being seishain occurring at 60 is in a contract. I insisted on
Yeah.
finding the language in either Japanese or English
Mhm.
versions of the contract, and it's not clear. It's
No.
really vague, extremely vague. And so I went to my senior mentors and people I respect in the community, um, who had retired, and asked
Mhm.
about why, and didn't only accept one person's sort of view, but several, and never got the same answer. And it was
Yeah.
always a little bit vague. But so I believe what's happening in not just our company, but in lots of companies across Japan, the government official position is retirement age should be 70, meaning that's when you're no longer seishain and you are start to do
Yeah.
self.
But
But
that's okay.
that position carries nothing, right? It means nothing.
So it means
Yeah.
I have a question. So that's an official position, but is it put black on white in the labor law? Do
Ah,
you
good
know
question.
about? Yeah.
Yeah, this is a very good question. So I believe the labor law had been adjusted, and I don't honestly know today what it is. There was a lot of talk about it 2 years ago when I was going through this, or at least I was uncovering the talk about it because that's
Hmm.
what I was looking for. But I honestly don't know if they've adopted any official rules in the labor law that change
Hey,
it.
if any of our listeners, if any of our listeners know,
Type
please
it
clue
in.
us
Yeah.
in. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, what the labor law, and it's sort of every day that passes by and you get older, I'm increasingly less interested in the labor law
Right.
because
Yeah.
because it doesn't apply to me. So it's like, okay, well, you've reached that date. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know what exactly will happen. I believe that people of value, if you will, that were even age 60 were not subject to this reduction in salary and kicked off a seishain status, out of the union, more or less. And so but those people, I suppose, are defined by some contribution they make significant, far beyond what a
Mm.
foreign white guy who speaks poor Japanese can contribute in Japan. So, and that's the other thing. I think there's a layer to this conversation about retirement in Japan. If you're a gaikokujin or a foreigner, then, and depending on your language skills, reading, writing, and so on, I think that sets a different dynamic for, I feel last night I was thinking about this conversation today, and I thought this is a bit like being 16 and not knowing what I'm going to do with the rest of my life, and debating between joining a gang or maybe being a hoodlum drummer in a rock band somewhere, and
Yeah.
and a real career, and and a real
Those are
in a
three
real life.
totally different options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
They are.
I feel the same right now. Like, okay, what can I
Right.
do? I could be seriously. I seriously thought about. Well, my wife just said, yeah, you could just go out and do your street music performing and make no money, and just be
Have fun.
known as that guy who just insists on sitting around making people listen to really badly performed music out on the street. And and she doesn't have any problem with that, but that's my 16-year-old self again thinking, and I don't know. um Still, I don't know what'll happen and what I'll do,
You know
but I
what? Yeah, because you're talking about you don't know what will happen and what will do. So once again, I go back to the stories of my previous coworkers,
mm,
and because I listened to many of them say similar things,
mm,
and eventually when they retired, at the age of 60, so
yeah,
it is like semi-retiring. So as I said, some of them went to work to other organizations. Which were not really commercial organizations.
mm,
Some of them, though, were very much actually looking forward to that retirement because their
mm.
stance was that once they retire, they would have enough time to do what they wanted to do.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that's
yeah,
20% in my
yes,
measurement.
and the interesting thing is that a couple of them actually set up companies at the age of 60. And because they had all that network, they did and they're still doing very well,
Mm, mm,
actually, with those companies because they had the experience, they had the network, they knew what they
mm,
wanted to do. And so this is another opportunity, which I think it's not for everybody, right? It's
mm.
not for everybody, but some people are very entrepreneurial and they have actually the assets to be entrepreneurs at the age of 60. And I
Yeah.
think it's really great because, yeah, very few people
Mm,
probably appreciate the opportunity, but maybe this is one way to go, or become
mm,
a mentor, become or sit on the board of new
mm.
companies or like startups and so on. I believe that this shouldn't be underestimated. This, as an opportunity actually to start doing, of course, doing your hobbies if you want to do all the power to you, right?
Yeah,
So that's a wonderful thing to do as well. But that once again, that knowledge should not be lost. The knowledge
yeah.
that has been accumulated over the 40 years of work should not
Mm.
be.
Interesting. Yeah, I think one of my colleagues told me after the present, and by the way, to be clear, I never delivered that presentation like in front of anybody. I just gave it to everybody and
Mhm.
finally got someone in HR to translate it to Japanese, and it was delivered to the highest level of management. But but what was I going to say? Something something you said
But
about
op-
my research with the colleague was about, he said 40% of the people at the company feel like I do, like offended and are just outright angry and just going to fight back with everything they have. And I didn't think about what I was supposed to be doing for work every day except this. That's all I thought about for 6 months. Maybe they'll hear that now and fire me, but but 40% also felt kind of shogunai, like just like, huh,
yeah,
I guess
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what
yeah.
the rule
Oh,
is,
and
and
yeah,
then
yeah,
20,
that's the rules.
20% were, as Maya described, really excited about the opportunity to do something else. And that actually speaks to this spectrum of engagement. There's a talk I do about health, wellness, and productivity in the workplace, and it's about cognitive productivity and so on, but it starts with this spectrum of people that I think Gallup does a poll every year, and you can find it online somewhere. I believe it's every year, and it's hundreds of thousands of people around the world from dozens and dozens of countries about their measuring their engagement at work. And engagement can be measured in several different ways, about general feelings of happiness at work, and do you have a close friend at work, and this way and that way. And essentially, worldwide, 2/3 of workers are disengaged on a spectrum from, if they fired me today, I'd be so damn happy it would be the best day of my entire life going forward, to, eh, I think I'll work from home today. I don't feel like going to the office. But they're still
Yeah.
engaged.
They still, yeah.
So that level, those levels of engagement, or that feeling people have when they go to work, clearly affect this way you feel about whether it's forced retirement or welcomed retirement, or I have a plan for retirement, or
Mm-hmm.
I have no plan for retirement. And again, I think the dichotomy is my stupidness in not tackling the language at a earlier age. I did study 25 years ago, started studying Japanese off and on from America while I was traveling here, but it never rooted into anything great. I mean, it's that old stupid story of Gaikokujin who have enough foundational Japanese to get by, and then meet somebody who speaks better Japanese than you and marries them, and then go, I guess I'm done learning, and then just shut it off, which was stupid,
Yeah,
really
we get
stupid.
lazy, don't we? We get dependent on people.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely. When you're hired, yeah, go ahead.
go ahead, go ahead. No, go ahead, go ahead.
All I was going to say is when you're hired for something you're bringing from the outside, and I asked for because we were paying thousands and thousands of dollars for a lot of people to take English uh, tests and classes outside of work, and these people were not very good at English, I was saying, and I said, my job isn't
Right.
to teach them English, so why don't you pay for me to learn better Japanese for a better integration? And they said no. So we
Oh,
want you
yes.
to speak English. So when your company tells you should speak English, and your wife
Yeah.
speaks better, and all these factors are pointing to say you don't need this,
Right.
then
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
do it. And I became that guy in Japan that I used to resent when I'd come here and they'd say, yeah, I've lived here 10 years. Oh, Nihongo ga jousu desu ka? And like, is it really good? Like, you must be really good at Japanese. And they would say, oh no, I've never studied. And I would go, what an a-hole. You know?
Right. Well,
And then I became that guy.
yeah, well, it happens. I mean, if you don't see the need, it's really difficult to find motivation to improve. So we've
Yeah.
got a comment from Luke McDonald. He writes, Japan's labor
Thanks,
law
Luke.
requires companies to set a minimum retirement age of 60 years old. After that, companies must employ employees until 65 and then make an effort to provide employment opportunities until they are 70. This is regardless of industry. Yes, but this is so indeed.
Make an
Yes,
effort. Make an
make an
effort.
effort
That sounds
exactly.
pretty fuzzy to me.
Yeah, and
We
also by
tried, but we
this,
couldn't.
yeah, also by this law, it is when once you hit 60, the company can employ you until 65, but they usually employ you on 1 year contracts. So
Yeah.
you have to renew your contract every year, and the
Yeah.
company
Yeah.
can kick you out actually, saying, I mean, they don't do that. The Japanese companies don't do that. Once they continue, but of course they still have this door they can kick you out of by saying that, okay, so this is a very hard year for the company, very hard year for the industry, or you haven't performed well, and so on. And people would usually say shogunai, yes, I'll take the hit. But also one thing that I believe with Japanese companies, and this is the system, if you have been seishain or permanent, if you have had a permanent employee status, you are also what's that? You're granted pension allowance,
Oh.
right? So when you retire, you can retire at 60, and usually that's basically you get that allowance when you retire at the age of 60, when your status of permanent employee is over. So you're given, some pension allowance by the company, and depending on the industry, depending on the company, this the amount of money you receive at retirement varies, but still, this could be really something that can help you once again, think about other possibilities, like opening your own business, or just spending time doing your hobbies, doing this or that. So once again, my previous employees, many of them were looking forward to receiving that pension allowance actually, and
Mm.
doing things. But I also wanted to say one thing, because of well, the time they spent working for their companies and in the industry. Once the people who set up their own companies, they actually went back to those companies and said to them, okay, now I have my own company and I'm doing this, this, and this. And if you need a contractor, I'm here. And many of them got their first jobs actually from their previous employers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
that's nice.
So, yeah, which is also another thing which I don't know whether it works this way in other parts of the world, but in Japan, it usually works like
Mm.
magic.
Mm.
So it's
Yeah.
a, you know, yes, a good stepping stone to actually develop your business if you want to do that, of course.
Yeah, I also know young people who've left their jobs in Japan, and then the first thing they started doing was the company they left hired them on
Mhm.
a contract basis as an outside contractor
Right.
to
Yes.
do the same job they were doing in the office.
Hmm.
So that can happen as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's great. That's good on them for being able to access that. That's
Hmm.
wonderful.
Yeah. But
Um,
Hey,
also
I
it
have a
tells,
question.
yes, go ahead,
I,
Tim.
yeah, James. So your company hires you, and they don't want you to learn Japanese. You
mm,
obviously have credentials in the architectural field, so I
mm.
understand that they would see value in that. What value do you think they saw in you to bring you in, but not have you have to learn Japanese? Like what in their mind? What was their? How are they framing your value package when they brought you in?
Boy, I'd love to know that. I was just telling my wife after a social gathering, I was hosting 30 architects from the Netherlands visiting Japan recently, and during I invited some people who have actually retired to come back to attend the gathering, just the social function after the presentations. And one of the elder gentlemen who was present when I was hired um, told others there, to my surprise, that he recruited me, and I'm like, "Oh, really?" So I didn't know that. That's great and
Yeah,
wonderful, but I'm guessing it was the work I had done in America, but I don't know that that sustains itself forever, right? I feel like you have to look for ways, and as we all do in our work, to find new ways to bring value to what you do. Um,
right.
so, so I think I've evolved in a little bit. I think they maybe hired for the pedigree, as you say, or whatever the stupid certifications or building design work that has been done in the past, but eventually that wears off, and you got to find something that um, maybe brings value to the company. And maybe part of that evolution for me has been transitioning from training and teaching at work about sustainability and resilience and low energy or zero energy design, zero carbon design, to maybe helping Nikken brand itself more
Hmm.
globally, with particularly with our award-winning projects. So helping to craft the story that shapes what we tell the world in English. Um, so that's been a little bit of an evolution for me,
Why
and
is
I'm,
that important? Why is that important to your company? Like, do they have an international presence?
yeah,
What
yeah, quite
I guess what
global.
I'm getting at, I'm looking, I'm trying to, in their minds, there was a space to be filled by hiring
Mm,
you. There was some
mm,
value they perceived. And I'm
mm,
wondering,
mm,
extrapolating from that, is there a hole in the market that you could fill? For example, if you started your own company, or
mm,
if they eventually push you out, is there
hmm.
something? Is there a niche that you feel comfortable you could
Maybe.
fill? And yeah,
I think
that's why
maybe
I'm
is
looking
the
for
answer.
opportunity. Yeah,
Yeah, partly again, and I feel like the boundary for me, and maybe it's just a self reflection of doubt and feeling like an imposter in this industry my whole life, but I just maybe worry that that there is probably that void and could be filled, but with the limitation of the Japanese culture and language, um, recognize that then there would be a very limited pool of projects where you could apply an sort of English speaking approach to sustainable design or resilient design
Or
solutions.
you
So
partner with somebody. You
yeah. That's probably the best way. Yeah. I love these, and James and Hannah, who you've mentioned as sponsors, I just love their approach to business and what they're doing with their company and how
Yeah,
they
me too.
kind of, and how they think about it and sort of, and then them personally, like how they think about
Yeah,
life. And they have just such a wonderful, um, I think,
I agree.
partnership, both with
Yeah,
their company, but also as a married couple. And I love that. I love that their success. And I love their posts. I guess when you follow people's posts, you feel like you know them through their,
yeah,
through what's happening with their posts. So their posts are just fantastic. I told James that
I,
once
I
when I
agree.
first met him, and
Yeah.
really wonderful storytelling, wonderful framings and thinking of
Yep.
a the lens of James' outside sort of view of why is this important in the Japanese context and culture. He probably learns from the company and from Hana and from others, but then um, he reframes it back to what I would think as a foreigner in any foreign land. When you see that thing, whatever it was, a void in the marketplace, for example, that someone has with a property, and they fill it, and it's successful. Just I don't know. It's really wonderful. It's just a really
Yeah.
good feeling I get from their experiences. A little bit of vicarious living, I guess.
Yeah.
And
Well, please
sometimes there's
allow.
a
Yeah.
void. Just a quick comment, and I'll let you.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
sometimes there's a void to fill, but the market doesn't see it yet. Okay, and I'll give you an example. Like when I was in the intercultural space, this was in the
Mm.
'80s. Japanese companies they'd moved to America, but they had no clue how difficult it was going to be connecting with the locals at a cultural level. I saw it, but it was a hard
Mm.
sell because
Uh,
they didn't see it yet. They had to spend a little time screwing up
uh,
and realize on their own that, oh
yeah,
my God, we have a problem. We didn't see this coming. And then you
yeah.
step in and fill it for them. But it was a really hard sell early on. And then after a
I
while,
bet.
it sold itself, right? So I don't know if maybe there's something there for you
Nice.
to
Thank you.
consider,
Yeah.
you know?
Hope so. Hope there's something there. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I don't know. I never thought about like ending work. And I guess I said this before, but if you did or do really love what you're doing and
Mhm.
where you live, maybe we all love where we live, or we might not live here. Um, it's hard to imagine not being there and not
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
something there. So
Right.
you kind of have to think about that change, that shift. Something's got to
Mhm.
change. Something's going to shift. And yeah, not being independently wealthy either, and not having lived in Japan. It'll be 10 years in March, early March. So I don't know if this affects pension in Japan, but I think if I've only contributed to Japanese pension I know nothing about for 10 years, I probably don't have enough there to get
Mm.
anything
Yeah.
back. It's
That's
really
true.
important.
Yeah, that's
So I
true.
believe so I believe the sort of Japanese people who've had, and I think this is easily discoverable. I was going to say Googleable, easily
Yeah.
discoverable, but I believe the savings rate, it used to be that the savings rate of the Japanese was one of the highest in the world. I don't know if that's
Mhm.
true anymore. China
Maybe
certainly
not.
probably surpassed it, but America has one of the lowest savings rate. In fact, I think it's a net negative
Mm.
Yeah.
savings rate. And then um, yeah, some people maybe don't have accumulated assets like others. So if you've had the seishain status in the Japanese, 30, 40, 50% bonus thing going on for, 40 years, you probably got a little resilient cash to start a business or to,
Yeah.
get something going, or even to sustain yourself for a while.
Yeah. So
I
Well,
think a
you
lot
got
of,
Social Security, though. You got Social
oh yeah.
Security, which is
Yeah. I think
compared to Japan, it's
that's
pretty
only good
good.
until January 20th, 2025.
Right. Okay.
Really?
We'll see. I'm hoping.
We'll
I'm
Yeah.
see.
hoping there
Yeah,
that's not the case.
Yeah.
probably.
Good luck.
We don't know. But
I'm
okay,
counting
If
on
so
the
if
zero.
not,
yeah,
I'll be looking for a job.
Right.
right.
Maybe you
No,
can help me.
so,
Japanese.
yeah, just a few details about the Japanese pension system. It is basically built for at least 30 years of paying into the system,
Hmm.
right? So, and of course, even if you pay fewer years or for a shorter time, you're still eligible to, to a pension after that, but it's not going to be enough to sustain yourself.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and maybe even now with everything going on in Japan, basically, even the people who have worked for 40 years and paid into the system for 40 years,
Yeah.
they still need, additional assets to
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
And then there is
Yeah.
a question, yeah, on YouTube. We've got Roami Blue asking, does the pay differ greatly between being an employee versus to being contracted with any company in Japan? And I
Mm-hmm.
would say yes, it differs. It is different. And
Mm.
when you're a contractor, you could be paid much less than a full status, like permanent status employee, or you could be paid much more. So it
Right.
depends on what you can do for the company, what projects you get involved in, and so on and so on. So you
Mm.
could be on either side of the spectrum,
Yeah.
if we, yes. Um, and also it depends on the industry as well. It depends on the company you work with, and so on. But yes, there is a lot of variability there. So I hope this answers your question, Romy. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, the picture is never it's never simple. There are always a lot of nuances, and there is a lot of variability once again. But I think that in general, so the social security system in Japan still works. It's not in its best condition. Unfortunately, it probably will require employees to rely more and more on their
Mm.
accumulated assets, or
Yeah.
maybe, work even after retirement, which I see many people are willing to do because it's not just because of the financial situation and financial burden, but because, like you, James, you say, if you love what you do, it doesn't feel like work. It's actually,
Yeah.
it keeps you active, it keeps you
Yeah.
right, in the
Yeah.
loop, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's important to keep doing what you love to do.
Yeah. I once got some great words of wisdom from a colleague many years ago. I think one of us was going through some kind of a transition. I don't actually remember what, but anyway, she being far more intelligent than me and insightful had sent these words in an email message to me, and I was looking for them as I was trying to listen to you and look on my phone and see if I could find them because I know I saved it somewhere. And it was something about fulfilling your passions and your desires. I think you said it, Maya, when you said looking for your hobbies or looking for the things that you love to do when you're not working, and finding a way to make a life with that. And
Yeah.
she didn't say make a living necessarily, or maybe she did use those words, but it didn't imply you need to make a lot of money doing this thing. It
Right.
was more about it was more about joy and happiness and finding peace, if you
Yeah.
will.
I think
Sort of.
we're
Peace of
getting it.
mind.
Yes,
Yeah, it's
peace
sort of
of
what I
mind.
feel like Tim is living.
Yeah.
I'm trying.
Yeah, but I think
Ace.
that
I'm
we're
trying.
getting
Good.
to a different area here. That area which has been so publicized and probably publicized in the Western world,
Mm.
about ikigai, right?
Ah,
And
so
once
so so.
again, yes, a very
Yeah.
good point you made about your friend who talked to you, that it's not necessarily necessary to make a lot of money and
Mm.
feel joy of life and
Mm.
feel engaged and active. It's important for you to have peace of mind and enjoy
Agreed.
what you're doing. Be with the people you want to be with, and at the end of
Yes.
the day, not struggle. Right? That.
It's funny you mentioned Ikigai. I was going to bring that up today because I had no idea after 37 trips to Japan from America over 18 years, I had no idea, never heard of Ikigai. However,
Well,
I had
me
heard of
neither, even
no,
though I lived
I
until maybe a year or two ago. And I
I
lived
know
in
what it is,
Japan.
but it's interesting because I've actually used this in a presentation in Japan. I had made a three circle uh, diagram like that, and actually it was about it's what landed me in Japan. It that ikigai, which I was accidentally making, landed me in Japan because I had read this thing about finding to do what you love and what the world needs, and can you make money doing it. And I just put it all together like after my divorce in 2011 back in America, and it all pointed to Japan. And I just went, I got to do this. So I did it,
Yeah.
and it
Right.
worked.
It
And it
worked.
all actually, if I look at that diagram, and that's why I put it up on the slide to share with my staff, I was just sharing to them that this is your system, your idea. And I don't know how many people have one. Nobody has one that I've asked that. Nobody I know in Japan has done an ikigai diagram.
Yeah, I think it's been overblown, of course, by the West. It sounds
Yeah.
like all Japanese have an ikigai.
Yeah. Nobody does.
The only time I've heard that that expression outside of those Venn diagrams
Hmm.
is elderly people who stopped doing some hobby that they loved and then they died pretty quickly afterwards and they lost their ikigai. I've heard it
Hmm.
described in that context, but
Hmm.
I feel like a lot of Japanese people are not happy, with their life,
I
and
agree.
I'm not saying it's their fault either,
No, no,
because
no, no.
the pressure of the culture and the society,
I
so.
agree. I agree.
Yeah.
But it's a good concept. I
Interesting.
like the concept. Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. I
Yeah.
mean, just the idea that, hey, what if I could do what I love and make money doing it and the world needed it? I mean, it's just
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
beautiful, right? It's like a Disney movie. It's like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And then we have one more question. Maybe Tim, you can answer it. I don't know. But Romy Blue says there are many Japanese based companies in Atlanta, Georgia. So, and is their pension system based on Japan or the US? And if it is based on Japan's system, would I be able to roll my 401k into their system? And I think
I
that
don't
every
think
time,
so.
no, because if even though they're Japanese companies in the United States, they still have to abide by the American law and legislation, so they cannot
On
do
paper,
that
they're American companies. On paper, they are
on
American
paper.
companies.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they do what is done in the United States.
mm,
Now, I
Well,
don't
that
know if they have the Japanese seishain who go there for 3 to 5 years. I don't know how that's handled. It may be Social Security taxed.
mhm.
For them, I don't know, but for the regular local American citizen employees, you're under the laws of the U.S. That for sure.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but thank you for this. And we're very close to actually saying goodbye to everybody today. And James, please say thank you to Kaya for letting
Oh,
for keeping us entertained.
she's
You're
singing, so she
entertaining
must,
us.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
she's singing, so she must be happy.
Yeah. And that's a wonderful thing. I'm happy to
She
hear that
found
she
her
must be happy
ikigai
as well.
hanging out
Yeah,
Yes.
with
she
Daddy.
found it for
Yes.
sure.
Yeah. And thank you very much for sharing the stories,
Yeah.
your story and your
Oh,
insights
thank
from
you. I
yes.
I really just wanted to join to listen to you two again. So
Yeah,
thank you for
I just
your
like
time, and
talking to James. I like
I like your
talking to James.
insights a lot, and I respect them. So I really was hoping and selfishly to get something from you, and I did. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, because
Thank
we
you.
did get something from you as well. And well, thank you. We have other comments on LinkedIn. We're going to reply to them after we finish the podcast. To everybody who was with us, thank you very much indeed. Kaya, Kaya-chan.
Bye
Hi,
bye.
thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thank you. I hope to meet you someday.
You
Yes,
I
will.
want to meet
person.
you.
You will.
Yes. All right. And once again, happy midweek and well, enjoy the rest of the week as well. And
Yep.
once
Thank you.
again, yes,
Talk
thank
to you
you.
soon, Tim. I hope.
Yep. Let's talk soon, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
And
Thank you,
one
everyone.
more. Yes, thank you again to everybody who listened to us or will listen to us, and to Kanagawa Chuo Jutaku or kanachu.com, and James Howell, and also Houze Inc. With Hannah or Howell. If you have any projects in mind in the real estate field or real estate property, please reach out to them. You'll find the contact details in the description of the YouTube video. And of course, you can connect with them on LinkedIn. Thanks a lot. See you next time. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.